Good afternoon, Seattle, and a warm welcome back to Le Frères, Heureux. We are recording miles apart this week. How bizarre. I have no one to speak to, no one to look at in the eye when I give my awful Frasier opinions.
Just having to stare at the wall.
I'm just staring at my computer screen. I'm just watching the little waveforms of our voices going up and down and up and down. It's very, very strange. But yes, welcome back to the first ever Zoom episode of Le Frères Heureux. I am unfortunately still under the weather with COVID. I avoided it for so long and then went away on holiday and brought it back with me. So that was wonderful. I've just been feeling so good the last week. But to avoid getting Euan ill, we decided to record over Zoom this week, which, might mean some differences in the audio, so we do apologise for that. But we thought better to get something out. You can still hear our lovely voices and our crappy opinions, regardless of whether we're in the same room or not. So yes, welcome back. It's been a few weeks. What is that? 3 weeks now since the last episode went out.
We will have had a 2-week hiatus.
Oh jeez, I feel bad. We were doing so well. We were keeping on top of things, and then it all kind of fell apart. Mainly my fault, because I chose to go on holiday and then chose to get COVID. So,
well, I wasn't going to say anything, but
yeah, apologies.
No, between the two of us, we wound up without any in the backlog. We were doing quite well for a little while with a backlog of episodes, and then we didn't have any. So when an emergency like this happens, we're just leaving you out to dry.
Yeah. To be fair, you did very well. That
fans.
Highlights video was good fun. I enjoyed watching that.
I enjoyed making it. I'm glad it turned out quite so well.
Yeah, it was good. I think people seem to like it as well. It seemed to go down pretty well compared to other videos that we've put out. So, yeah. Well done on that. I take no credit.
Thank you.
That was all you. I've almost forgotten where we were. I watched the episodes in preparation for recording last week, and then I was just too ill to actually sit down and record and chat to you. So apologies if some of the plot aspects fly by me or I get things wrong. I do apologise. Do keep me right as well, please.
I'll try my best, but I'm unfortunately in the same boat.
Yeah.
I watched these prepared for, I think actually I'm going to try and get an episode recorded before you went away. So
yeah,
it's been about 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks since I actually watched the episodes.
Yeah, sorry guys. We're fine. We'll do our best. We'll get something down. So we are on disc 2 of season 5. Season 5 kicks off to a fairly decent start, I'd say. And I think this disc is a wee bit more of a mixed bag, as most of disc 2s are on the previous seasons as well. I think the quality, it doesn't take a huge dip, but it's definitely not as strong as like the opening and the closing discs, I think is fair to say.
There's always a dip in the middle. No, I agree. Actually, I think the worst disc score overall was season 2, disc 2.
What's on disc 2 of season 2? I'm trying to remember now.
I can't remember. There were lots of 2s. I remember that much.
Oh, that's with You Scratch My Book and
No, that's disc 3.
Oh, is it disc 3? Yeah, that's later, isn't it? What's on? That's probably very telling that I can't even remember what's on disc 2.
So season 2, it's got Adventures in Paradise.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Burying a Grudge, Seat of Power, Roz in the Doghouse.
Yeah, I mean, there's some decent episodes on there, but yeah, fair enough. I think this episode's, I don't know how you've marked it. Mine have definitely been very mixed, very up and down throughout them. So we'll see how we get on. We start off with my Fair Frasier. Frasier has bought a gift for Roz. She is still pregnant, unsurprisingly, and he's bought her a little gift to cheer her up. Bought her a little handbag that is just really pretty awful. I don't know what he was thinking when he bought it. It looks like a little pencil case. It's just the weirdest little thing.
I don't have much of an opinion on handbags.
No?
I will take your word. Well, I can take Rose's word for it as well, because she certainly doesn't seem to enjoy it.
She does not. Yeah, it's definitely not in her style. It's very sparkly. It's just a bit weird. And Frasier tries to return the gift, and they won't have it. They won't take it back. They actually make fun of him for trying to return it. I think the shopkeeper thinks that it's his, and he's trying to cover it up by saying that he bought it for a friend. But if that was the case, surely, like, why would he be returning it? Like, if he bought it, quote unquote, for a friend, i.e. himself, then surely he would know what he was buying.
Yeah.
But the shopkeeper is just like, oh yes, of course, for your friend. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Very disrespectful. Doesn't have a clue, that old lady. Don't like her. Thankfully, the lovely Samantha Pierce, I think her name is,
Pierce. Yeah,
comes to his rescue and convinces the shopkeeper to give him a discount. They get chatting and they go out on a date. And the two of them don't really hit it off at first, until she suggests to go home, skip dinner, go home, and have sex. I don't know how common that is in the world of dating. Can't say it's ever happened to me, but it's certainly played as a very unreal scenario, I guess.
Yeah.
Something that does not normally happen. And as the episode goes on, there's sort of more of these unorthodox situations. What's the word? I don't want to use unreal again. Sort of,
unrealistic.
Unrealistic, yeah. And the Frasier's family kind of imply that the reason that it feels so unrealistic is because Samantha is playing the role of, quote unquote, the man, and Frasier is the stay-at-home woman waiting for her phone call, waiting for her to take him out to dinner. She's the one buying flowers, she's the one initiating sex, things like that. And it's sort of this weird, like, play on, like, gender norms, I guess. It's weird how they play it. I don't know. I couldn't decide where I come down on it, like whether it's a sort of fun satire and play on how relationships are normally viewed, or if it's kind of like a haha, Frasier's the woman.
Yeah, that's the way I feel like it's being played.
Yeah,
maybe I'm just not picking up on the satire within it, but I definitely see it as just Frasier is uncomfortable because he's the woman and doesn't like that.
They so much as say, even at the end of the episode, Frasier decides to confront Sam about this, and sort of say, "Look, I'm done. I don't want to play the submissive role in the relationship." And they go out to a big party with she's a big time lawyer, and go out to a party with all of her lawyer friends, and all of the other lawyers are implied to be, or I think are actually explicitly told to be, male, and all of the male lawyers' girlfriends are like crowding around and sitting having champagne with Frasier, and it's very on the nose. All the jokes, like them sort of speaking in unison about how they're going to get more time together when this case is finished. And then obviously that there's always another case. There's always some other excuse for why they can't spend time together. And it's, yeah, I don't know. It's either very, very like nuanced humor, this like very weird take on like the gender norm satire, or yeah, it is just totally played like Frasier's the woman, ha ha. And I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I couldn't really decide.
I'm not a big fan of it. The thing that annoys me about it especially is that Frasier gets really under his skin the idea that like he's so affronted that he would be the woman in the relationship and he has to be the man. He has to be the one that leaves his partner hanging.
Yeah.
And then Samantha turns around and buys him a gift to apologize for leaving and buy like an expensive watch. And then all of a sudden he doesn't care.
Yeah.
You know, it was a big deal to him that he was being looked down upon by his partner, and he felt uncomfortable because he was having things done to him that he's probably perfectly comfortable doing to other people. And then as soon as it benefits him, suddenly his principles, quote unquote principles, go out the window, and it's all just about the fact that he's bought a fancy watch that he can show off to all of the ladies.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of continued that theme of not really he's in it for like the superficial is kind of continued in the second part of the episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know what you mean. It's an all right episode. I think it doesn't do itself any favors by trying to make these kind of like dated jokes about like the sort of male-female roles in a relationship. I think they definitely could. They could have done it in a way that was more in line with what Frasier's good at, and that's kind of like subverting the norm, I guess, rather than just poking fun at it.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
I don't know if that makes sense, but it feels too much like they're just laughing at Frasier because he's the woman, rather than doing something a bit more fun with it and interesting with it.
It seems more like a plot line that you would see happening to Chandler on Friends, rather than something that you would see happening on Frasier.
I think you're spot on. Yeah, I think it's definitely more of. I mean, obviously Frasier's a sitcom, but it's a little bit more. It's going to sound really pretentious if I say sophisticated, isn't it?
Well, I think a lot of people do look at it that way. It isn't always like that.
No,
but a lot of the, someone I read an article or heard someone, maybe it was just a tweet, I can't remember. Someone talking recently about the Frasier was written. A lot of sitcoms will have I think they call it the 70% rule, where you'll have jokes that are maybe a little bit more niche, a little bit more out there, referencing something that not everyone knows, but as long as 70% of the audience gets it, then you're fine.
Yeah.
But a lot of Frasier is written with the 20% rule with jokes, where it's maybe a little, not necessarily more highbrow references, but just they weren't as worried about making it that everyone had to get every joke. And I think that maybe makes it seem a bit more, maybe not more sophisticated, but just pretentious sometimes in a fun way.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think it's to its credit and to its downfall in equal measure. I think that's what makes it so unique and so hilarious, is that it doesn't pander to sort of all demographics, I guess. Demographics isn't really the right word. Well, is it? I guess. Maybe.
I suppose so.
It isn't openly accessible to anyone. I don't think anyone who, for example, watches Friends would jump on and watch this just off the cuff. They wouldn't just stick it on in the background. Whereas you might the other way around. Friends is a lot more just you stick it on in the background and it's on and you just kind of laugh along with it.
Yeah, it's a lot more universal.
Yeah. I mean, I can't stand Friends, but in theory, I think it's more universal.
See, the thing that I like about Friends, and I think it's maybe the fact that it is universal, is that it kind of just hits a lot of the notes of just a generic sitcom. It's quite what's the word? Predictable. You can just you know how every joke is going to unfold, whether you've seen it before or not, because it really is just the generic sitcom. And in a way that's quite comforting sometimes. Yeah. I find myself watching Friends when I'm very hungover or very sick because it's like I don't need to think about it. I could just have it on as a bit of light entertainment, and it hits that perfectly.
See, for me, I think it's not to sway too far off course, but I think for me it's kind of like if you're looking at it in terms of levels, like, and this makes me sound like a sophisticated, pretentious prig, but it's too universal. And it's not that I'm against things that everyone loves, but I think in my head, I compare that era of comedy. I compare things like Frasier to Friends. And I'm like, they're not even in the same league to me. Like, Frasier is just so much funnier. It's so much more clever. It's so much more unique. So whenever I sit down and watch Friends, I'm like, I'd rather be watching Frasier. So I think that I can't watch it because I'm just like thinking about other shows that I'd rather be watching because they're so much better.
Yeah.
But anyway, yes, right. Enough about Friends. I can't remember how we got started down this path.
Yeah.
It
doesn't matter.
It's fine. We did not leave a trail of breadcrumbs, so we'll just move past it. What do you think about Sam? How do you like Sam as a guest character?
I don't mind Sam. I do quite like that we've got Frasier dating someone who's a bit more of a high profile, career driven person, because we don't see much of that. I don't think. Usually when Frasier's love interests are introduced, we just see them kind of as Frasier's love interests and not much else.
Yeah, that's fair. See, I always see her as one of the weaker of Frasier's love interests. And I think it's just because she's a bit two-dimensional. The character is kind of just a lawyer.
Yeah.
She's just played as a sort of upper-class, snooty lawyer. Snooty's maybe not the right word. Like, it's not even like arrogant either, but it's
she's just very high profile and very being career driven. It's that sort of power suit wearing.
But then you've got someone like Lilith, who's very high profile and very sophisticated and sort of the same, again, not like arrogant, but like knows what she wants, and she's amazing, and just so great in every scene. Whereas I can't help but feel Sam's just kind of a one-off, like two-dimensional guest.
Yeah,
and I feel bad saying that, but
no. I think the difference is maybe Lilith. We so rarely see stories that revolve around Lilith's career in like a plot sense. it's so much more about her personality and her relationships with the other characters, which
Yeah.
we will be getting to very soon.
Yeah.
But when Lilith next shows up in the next disc.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
compare some of Frasier's later love interests, like Cassandra or Faye in season 6. They both have like important jobs or like important careers. They're kind of shown as career-driven people, but we never have any stories involved with their job. My Fair Frasier is all about Sam's job and how it is impacting their relationship. So
I guess
there's not much room for seeing what Sam is like as a character.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. Yeah. Yeah. We'll move on because I want to get to the second part as well.
Yeah.
So what did you rank it? How do all those aspects of the episode hold up for you?
I give a 2.
Cool. We're in agreement then.
Are we agreed?
We are agreed. Yeah.
We're agreed. Yeah, for me, it's mostly the fact that I just don't really like how Frasier is acting here. We don't get an awful lot of Sam's personality, as you've said, but from what we can see, she seems like a perfectly nice person. They seem to get along quite well when they are spending time with each other. Frasier's quite fond of her. And yet, the idea of her occasionally having to cancel a date, or her being quite forward in terms of their sexual relationship, is so off-putting to him because he wants to be the man in the relationship, and it almost ruins the whole thing for him. And I always find that frustrating. Frasier being his own worst enemy.
I think I agree to an extent. I think the way that Frasier explains it at the end of the episode, when he kind of says, like, I don't like how you're... It's because of how it's been built up through the rest of the episode that it is this sort of gender normed role reversal. That when he does finally say to Sam, look, you said you'd call, but you didn't. You're always the one to initiate things and take charge and things like that. And she kind of responds by saying, well, what, would you rather that I'm the submissive one and you're the big, strong man? And I think it's fair enough if you look at it that way. I think Frasier does come across as a bit of a dick. But if you look at it objectively, he's raising concerns about her in the relationship because she's not being fair. Like, she is the one who's not returning his calls, who's saying they'll have dinner and then bails, who's, taking charge of things and not really listening to what Frasier wants to do. And that is they're all reasonable criticisms in a relationship. They're reasonable things for Frasier to be upset about. I think it's just the underlying group of, like, all of those packaged up into the whole, like, submissive man thing that makes Frasier so insecure is when it's a bit like, okay, right, he's just being an ass. He's not.
Yeah.
He doesn't actually have real criticisms. He just doesn't want to be that submissive. So, yeah, okay. Fine, 2 out of 5. 2 out of 5 for part 1. And it's another one of those episodes that isn't like a part 1 and part 2. It's 2 episodes that kind of tie into each other. The second part being desperately seeking closure. And again, I think it's a little bit of a weaker entry after the first disc. It kind of follows the trend of My Fair Frasier, where it just doesn't hold up. I don't know.
No, I agree. I'm not really a fan of the two, either separately or together.
Yeah, I think it's definitely not warranting a 2-parter. I think that annoys me more than anything else, that they made it into a two-parter. I don't know why they chose Sam. I don't know why they chose this storyline to spread out over multiple episodes, because there was no need for it at all.
Yeah.
It just feels totally unnecessary. So the summary of the second part of the episode is it's actually set like a week or two. It's not long after the first episode, but Sam and Frasier have been on holiday. They've been skiing in the Alps or something. I can't remember exactly where. And they come back. Frasier's getting along well with Sam and all of her famous friends. And then she breaks up with him. Right at the start of the episode, she breaks up with him. She's not happy. She can't really put her finger on why. She just isn't clicking, which at the end of the day is a perfectly reasonable reason to break up with someone. If you're not feeling it, you're not feeling it. And that's fair. But Frasier takes it upon himself for the remainder of the episode to essentially stalk her and try to pester her into explaining why they broke up. Frasier's really bizarre in this episode. I don't know what the writers were trying to do with him. It feels very out of character for Frasier. I don't know if you agree or not. I know you...
No, I do. I agree. I think the character's totally all over the place. In the opening scene, he's completely starstruck with all of these people that he's spending time with. And when we get back into that later on, that's the whole reason that he was so invested in the relationship with Sam, is because it meant that he could meet all of these famous people.
Yeah.
Which seems like it would usually be a violation of his ethics that he's usually so precious about. And then in the middle, he does act a lot more creepily than he usually would.
Yeah, absolutely.
Usually if he's obsessing about something, he'll be doing it by himself and not really getting in the person's space as much. Whereas here, he goes and sits outside Sam's work and pesters her when she's on the street, and
it's really creepy. It's like proper like nice guy TM in behavior, and it just doesn't feel like him. It doesn't feel like him at all. It's even weirder that it's so soon after the first episode. It's like, as I say, it's meant to take place like a week after the first episode. And he and Sam got on pretty well in the first episode, despite like their, the role reversal issues and submissive and whatever. They did seem to be getting along pretty well. Like, there are scenes where you see them sitting having dinner and they're chatting and getting along and blah, 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 blah. And it has nothing to do with her being a lawyer, with her having connections. But all of a sudden, as soon as they go away on holiday and go away with all of these famous people, Frasier comes back and suddenly that's all he can think about. That's the relationship to him. It feels very disconnected to the first episode.
Yeah.
Both in how the characters are portrayed and just the plot as well. Just doesn't make that much sense. If you look at it as a two-parter, I don't know. It's really strange. It's really hard to describe as well. Like,
yeah.
When you're watching
it doesn't feel like one story spread out across the two episodes.
Yeah.
It feels like they maybe... I mean, I would guess maybe they came up with the story for the second episode, realized they didn't have enough time to do it all in one, and then that was when they did My Fair Frasier, and kind of just had to come up with a bit more of a generic sitcom. Oh, Frasier wants to be the man in the relationship, and then kind of do an episode of that setting up Sam as a character.
Yeah.
For desperately seeking closure.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I don't know. It's not one that I ever go back and rewatch. To be honest, I always tend to skip it if I'm going through the series.
No, I'm the same.
It's I hate slagging off the writing, but we praise it enough. So I think we're allowed to, when there is something questionable, I think we are allowed to slag it off. And
Yeah.
these 2 episodes, particularly the second part, I think are really just, they come out of left field completely, and not in a good way at all. They just don't hold up against other episodes surrounding them, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. We get a couple of good scenes though. We get the scene where where Frasier's trying to figure out what's wrong with him, and they're all coming up with the various aspects of his personality that they don't like.
Yeah.
So like listing them off, he's pretentious, I can't even remember all of them. Conceited.
Yeah.
Pompous.
I just remember they're arguing and going back and forth, all listing them all, and Daphne suggests something, and Frasier kind of says like, "Oh no, I'm not going to write that. I'm going to reword it, and I'm going to write it because it's more." And then he says something in French, and Martin just says pretentious. He goes, "No, I've already got pretentious in the list." He goes, "Yeah, underline it."
Underline it, yeah. Yeah, it is good. So it's not. I mean, the episodes aren't completely without merit, but
yeah, I think both of them, the places that are really good. I mean, anytime you see Daphne, Martin, and Niles in both of these episodes, it's just the 3 of them together, kind of checking in. In My Fair Frasier, we get the side. They go to the boat show.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, of course.
Well, you don't even see them doing it, so it's not even like a B plot. They just talk about going, and then later in the episode, you see them having come back.
Yeah.
And then, desperately seeking closure, we get this bit of the 3 of them. Is Roz there as well? Am I imagining
Roz
that?
is in in the
well.
second part. Yeah, Roz is there. Her and Daphne are going out to see a movie or something, so she shows up. But I think it's weird, right? Because as of like back end of season 4, definitely into season 5, the supporting main cast are getting more character development. They're definitely getting more chances to shine by themselves, given their own plot lines, whether it ties in with Frasier or not. But then here, in these 2 episodes, they're definitely like relegated to just supporting cast. Their plot lines in both the episodes, like the boat show and then the second one when they're all sort of just having dinner and making fun of Frasier and whatever, they're just kind of there. They're just kind of there to support Frasier's plot. And I know it's his show, and I know it's all about him, but it's so much better when we get a decent B plot.
Yeah.
And here we just don't. It feels like the middle of season 1 when it was all about Frasier, and we'd get maybe a couple of scenes throughout the episode with other cast members, and they just had no personality, and they were just Frasier's family. And that's disappointing. It
is disappointing, yeah. I can imagine this being like a middle of season 1 kind of story.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how did you rate the second part?
Same as the first part, I give it a 2.
Same as the first, yep. I'm exactly the same.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. I was going to try and like bump up one of them to give it a wee bit more generous of a rating, but then I was like, I couldn't find enough to justify it. Just for all the reasons we've spoken about, it doesn't hit the mark for me. It's not up to the standard of the other episodes, and I think even though we are definitely going to get some more 1s later on, some lower ranked episodes, there's usually like a specific reason that drags those episodes down. Whereas here, I think they're just 2 pretty poor overall episodes. I don't know if that makes any kind of sense, but
They're definitely
like,
quite forgettable. I think the second one
yeah,
maybe more than the first.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's a good way of putting it. Because even like I think I can think of a couple episodes coming up that I would probably give a lower ranking. They're lower for a reason, and I remember why I don't like them. Whereas these two is kind of like,
Yeah.
they're just kind of there and just not really doing much, surrounded by better episodes. So, yeah, there we have it. Desperately seeking closure from this conversation about two bad episodes. But that's fine, because we've got a better episode coming up next. I know you like this episode. Do you want to take the lead on this one?
Yes.
Okay.
So, I absolutely love this episode. I actually mentioned it in our last episode when we were talking about Disc 1. That I think this is probably my favorite Christmas episode. Or definitely one of the best.
One of the okay.
And it has in it some of the best. One of the things I always love about Frasier is the double meanings. I think it was in the Halloween episode I was talking about this. Mm-hmm. The Halloween episode has some good double meanings in it, and I was saying that I think this episode is probably the best in the whole show. Perspectives at Christmas. So the episode unfolds kind of like an anthology. We've got all of the different characters, or the five, main cast, are all getting massages and retelling why the past couple of days have been so awful for them in the lead up to Christmas. And we get each one has their own story separately. Martin is preparing to perform in a Christmas pageant at the local church, where he needs to sing a song as a wise man, and he's struggling to hit the high notes. Daphne is misunderstanding a lot of the stuff that Martin is saying and doing, and has become convinced that he's dying, which is where all the double meanings come in. Frasier accidentally tells Roz's mother over the phone that Roz is pregnant, not realizing that Roz didn't tell her mother herself yet. And then we get quite a short little segment of Niles being stuck in the lift, and having to climb his way out. I just think all of the segments are really funny on their own. It's got such great dialogue in it. The stories are really nice and tight, and they unfold really well. Some of the best physical acting as well, I think.
The scene at the piano is...
The scene at the piano, yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah.
It's just, I think it's a fantastic episode across the board.
See, yeah, I love the format. I love the format of it. Well, okay, right. I'm going to preface this, okay? Objectively, I love the format. And you're probably going to hate me for this, especially when I give you my ranking of it, right? But it's I objectively, I think it's a really strong episode. I think it's really unique in how it's told. How, yeah, as you say, how the story unfolds, how the different pieces are kind of fit together, how they tie into one another, and more importantly, how the individual stories change based on who's telling them. I think that's so unique and so fun. It's, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I can't off the top of my head think of another sitcom that's done it like that. Like, that's based an entire episode sort of around that format. I can think of instances where, like, halfway through an episode, someone says, oh, hey, remember when this happened? And they flash back, and it's kind of told from one person's perspective. And then they're like, no, that wasn't how it happened, blah, blah, blah. But I can't think of another instance where an entire episode is, like, segmented into different people's perspectives. I'm sure there is. I'm sure there must be. But in my
There's
eyes...
an episode, now that we're talking about it, there's an episode of How I Met Your Mother, where there's a similar thing where it's like they're in a house and you see the story unfold 3 times, but it's in each room of the house.
That's true. Yeah.
And it's like and then it kind of seeing something happen in the other room explains some weird thing that happened earlier in the episode in the first room.
Yeah, you hear like someone
but it's
crying
not
from
really
the other
about
room and,
like it doesn't change based on how people are perceiving it.
Yeah. See, that's the bit I think's really cool about this episode is how just little lines and little deliveries, like obviously they were re-recorded, they're not the same. The scenes were filmed multiple times with slightly different scripts, you know? Or even if the script was the same, just how it's acted is slightly different. And I love that. I love how unique it is, and I love how well it's done as well. However, right, and I'm going to be really critical here, and I apologize in advance for it, but I personally, and this is me with my little subjective hat on, don't like seeing the same scene over and over again. And I know it's not like consistent. It's not like we see the same scene 10 times with slight changes every time. It's only like a couple of times at most that we see the same bit. But for me, it loses marks for just being a bit like repetitive. Even with the slight perspective changes, there's just that air of repetitiveness on seeing the same bits done again and again. And that's I'm not a fan of those kinds of episodes. I'm thinking there's an episode of The Simpsons that's probably a bit more similar to how you said that there's that episode of How I Met Your Mother, that it's 3 different people's storylines, it's 3 different characters' storylines, and they all play out, and they all kind of tie into each other's stories, but you're still watching 3 mini stories within one big one, and it's kind of, I don't know, there's just something about it that makes me wish I could just sit and watch a full 20-minute episode rather than 4 or 5-minute episodes.
Yeah. No, that's understandable. I get that.
So it's as much as objectively I love it and how unique it is and how well it's done and portrayed, something about it just doesn't click for me personally. Which I hate, because really it should. It's got everything that is great about Frasier. All these like unique plot points, all the, like the unique writing and the direction and everything is all great. But it just something about it. It's just a little bit not there. Little bit not there. So yeah, I've marked it down slightly for that, I'm afraid. I'm sorry to say.
Ugh, terrible. Oh well.
So I'm guessing that you gave it a full distinguished 5 cups.
I did indeed give it a full distinguished 5 cups.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this is a 5-cupper.
Favorite episode of the season? I think you said it was Last Disc. Or you said it was definitely up there.
Ooh, it's definitely up there. There are gonna be at least another couple that I'm gonna give 5s to.
Okay.
And I don't know if I would necessarily put this above those. So I'm gonna give that a maybe. The it being a favorite is a maybe.
Okay. Well, it's definitely not my favorite, I'm afraid. I gave it only a 4.
Oh.
A 4 cups, and I almost even went down to a 3. I'm afraid.
Unbelievable. Podcast over.
I think
I'm going
it's
home.
yeah.
Oh wait, I'm already home.
You're already home this time. Yeah, it's for all the reasons that I've said already. It's just something about it just doesn't quite gel with me. So despite it being objectively a great episode, and I can see that, I can look at something objectively and be like, this is amazing. This is a work of art. This is one of the season's best episodes. But for me, it's just not quite there. Which, yeah, it's probably not the last time that I'll say that about an episode. I can think of at least one other that's like objectively very good that I'm just not a huge fan of. And vice versa, actually. I think there's a couple of episodes as well that are objectively probably not great, and I think were critically not great as well, but I love them. So I guess it goes both ways. Please don't hate
we
me.
all have stuff like that. I mean, I'm definitely guilty of liking some things that are not critically good.
Yeah.
I'm sure we're going to have plenty of opportunities to talk about that when we inevitably start our horror movie podcast.
Yeah.
and I talk about my feelings about Jason X.
Oh god.
Because I mean, I love that film. But it's awful.
You're going to make me watch Jason X, aren't you?
Of course I'm going to make you watch Jason X.
Watch Jason X. Okay. In the meantime, before we move on to the scary stuff, we've got Where Every Bloke Knows Your Name. Obviously, a slight nod to the previous Frasier show, and definitely taking a lot of inspiration from it throughout the episode. It's not quite, I don't know. It's not so on the nose. I don't think you need to know Cheers to enjoy this episode. I don't know that it necessarily helps, but there are definitely like links there that you can see if you know Cheers. I mean, obviously, like I don't know it inside out, but I know of it, and I know a lot of things about it, and that kind of helps a wee bit on the appreciation of this episode, I think. Just even Frasier's affinity for pubs, I think.
Yeah.
So Frasier's, he's in a bit of a rut. He's not really sure where his head's at the moment, and he's trying to figure out what he wants to do. He's cancelling plans with Niles left, right, and centre. He doesn't want to go to dinner. He doesn't want to go to the opera. Doesn't want to go to the museum. He just doesn't. He just wants to try something new. He doesn't really know what's going on, and
he doesn't want to go to the lecture series on the history of modern lecture series.
Yeah, poor Niles. That sounds like a fascinating evening.
I honestly would be really interested. I think that could be really interesting.
Of course you would. I'd fall asleep. 100%. I would fall asleep at something like that. Yeah, no modern lecture series for him. And during a poker game that Martin is hosting, Daphne invites him down to her regular, the Fox and Whistle. And Frasier being, as we said, a bit of an affinity for pubs, and under the promise of meeting a young lady, one of Daphne's friends, they go together. And even though Daphne's friend is actually seeing someone or engaged, she's engaged. They went away on holiday and came back, didn't they? Frasier decides to stay and have a drink, and he gets on well with everyone, amazingly, since they're all English and definitely not his typical crew. But it kind of goes to, it goes to something that we've been saying for a long time, that Frasier definitely has, out of him and Niles, Frasier definitely has this sort of working class side to him that comes out every now and again. He likes to get down and dirty, step down from the elite and have a pint, sing some show tunes over a live piano.
Yeah, it's quite funny seeing how Frasier has that where he kind of goes from his usual stereotypically upper class things like his opera and wine club, and going out to the pub. And we've also seen other times Daphne doing the opposite,
Yeah.
where she's a lot more working class, but can also be seen to, go out and enjoy a glass of sherry and making, opera references.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
is sometimes a lot more cultured than she seems. I think it could actually make a really interesting episode if you had Frasier and Daphne swapping places in social settings for
Yeah.
once. Frasier goes down to the pub and Daphne has to accompany Niles to the opera or something.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. They definitely could have added that as a sort of subplot to this episode. Maybe. I don't know. Frasier kind of ousts Daphne a wee bit. I think he becomes a little bit... It's not that he's obnoxious, strictly. It's just that he doesn't really know... He doesn't really know his limit or the boundaries of like Daphne's work-life balance, because she is obviously his boss. He is obviously her boss, and that is her pub. That's her regular. It's her friends. So Frasier going down there and starting to frequent it is kind of putting her in a weird place, and she's not... I don't know. She's not loving it. And it kind of culminates in her going to confront him. And in it, to Frasier's credit, he is very accepting of it. He does kind of say, well, fair enough. Like, I wouldn't like it if my boss came down and got in my face and at my regular, I couldn't escape him. So yeah, that's totally fair. I'll back off. Only to find out that Daphne's only been a regular there for like a month. And since Frasier's only been there a few weeks as well, they fight it out. They have a darts match, or cricket, as the bartender says. I've never heard darts being called cricket before. Have you?
No.
Never once in my life.
I don't think I've ever been in a pub with people playing darts, to be totally honest.
Nah, okay. Well, that's fair enough.
Is that a thing that people do often?
I don't know if often, but I've definitely been to pubs where you can sit and play darts. Or pool or whatever. Sports bars.
Yeah.
I think it's very telling that I'm more of the pub frequenter. I don't know that I am necessarily. Maybe it's just the type of pubs I go to.
Maybe.
Not as high class as yours.
I don't know if I would say I go to high class pubs.
You go to the pubs that serve wine and sherry.
That's true. I do like sherry. Actually, slightly off topic, but you've reminded me. I got an interesting question on Instagram from one of our lovely listeners, Angie. Sent a message asking if either of us have anything that we have kind of adopted into our personality that's been influenced by Frasier. Like a taste, for example, for classical music or for sherry, which I have both of. Yeah. I like a nice glass of sherry, and I like classical music.
Yeah.
Do you have anything that you think of as...
Yeah, well, classical music, definitely. I don't know that was strictly Frasier. It was definitely something that I kind of grew to enjoy over time. We've been watching Frasier since we were both kids, but it's only in the last 3 or 4 years that I've really started to get into classical music. I don't know why, really. I think I just kind of grew a taste for it, I guess. I don't think it was strictly Frasier that influenced that. It certainly helped, but I don't know if it was that. The only other thing that like comes to mind immediately is some of the mannerisms, particularly in Niles, actually, rather than Frasier. There's some of the faces and some of the phrases that he uses that I have definitely like adopted and use far more regularly than I should.
Yeah, I think we're both guilty of that.
Yeah. But I don't know if that's really what you're looking for, or if it's more sort of, the likes of wine and classical music and opera and
anything
whatnot.
like that.
Yeah. Some mannerisms I think I've definitely been influenced by Frasier. I don't think there's anything else really. I'm not really much of a fashionista. I don't really wear many suits or anything like that. I'm not one for the theatre.
No, I'm not a fan of theatre.
Or antiques or anything like that. That's not really my taste.
No, I'm the same. I'm not really. I'm not one for whom antique is a verb.
Very good. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question, though. I like that. I like those those kinds of questions. Very good. Thank you, Angie. Shout out to Angie. You have, however, completely thrown me off. I can't remember what I was talking about. Oh, cricket.
Well, we were getting around to it anyway. So they play darts.
They play darts, and despite Frasier winning, his taunts go a bit far in the eyes of the English pub. It's very anti-monarchy, making fun of our way of spelling and whatever else there is. Food as well. I think he makes fun of like shepherd's pie and stuff. Or is that another episode? He's definitely does it more than once. So
he makes fun of the Queen is the thing that I really remember.
Yeah.
Which, frankly, I agree with.
Completely agree with.
Totally. I'm trying to remember exactly what it is he calls her. I think he calls her a dowdy old sandbag with a flower pot on her head or something like that.
Something along those lines. Yeah.
Um,
And yeah, Daphne obviously defends her, saying she's got more. I can't even remember what it is she says exactly. More taste or more respect or something in her little finger than his entire country or something like that. Something along those lines. They're basically slagging off each other's countries, but obviously because they're in an English pub, Daphne has the backing of the other patrons, whereas Frasier does not. So he is quickly chased out of the pub, and thus ends the venture at the Fox and Whistle. And we get a nice little sort of vignette as well around the episode, which I didn't mention at the start, but the episode actually starts with a flashback to Frasier and Niles at prep school. The two of them are having lunch in the cafeteria and slagging off the cooking while discussing. Is it Orpheus and Eurydice they discuss at the start as well?
Yeah, Orpheus and Eurydice.
And then at the end of the episode, they have a little chat in the cafe. They've had a little bit. They have a falling out throughout the episode because Frasier doesn't want to go to the opera with Niles anymore, and they make up in the cafe at the end. Frasier gifts him a copy of the Gleinberg production of Orpheus and Eurydice.
Yeah,
and then it does another flashback, this sort of vignette that ties the episode together of Frasier and Niles back at prep school, and he does the same thing. He gifts Niles a CD of Orpheus and Eurydice. I can't remember what version it is. He gives him back in the day though.
Well, it's on 8-track.
On 8-track, is that what it is?
Orpheus and Eurydice on 8-track.
Yeah.
Yeah, I looked as I usually do. I was looking at the episode on IMDb and reading through the trivia.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I say I'm a fan of classical music. Admittedly, I didn't know this. Apparently, the Glyndebourne production of Orpheus and Eurydice is actually it's a real like collector's item. It's a real
Oh,
thing
really?
because Dame Janet Baker, who is a famous opera singer, a mezzo soprano, this was her like final public performance.
Oh,
Was doing Orpheus and Eurydice, and it as a result, it was really, really popular. So recordings of it are like very highly coveted. Um, so there was just a bit of attention to detail that I really like that the writers put that in as like a real thing that Frasier and Niles would be fawning over.
they would do. Yeah, that's good. So I really like this episode. I think it's a really strong episode. It's not quite a 5 for me. I gave it a 4. Give it 4 cups of coffee. It's really strong. I think it just doesn't quite have. It doesn't quite have that sort of Frasier uniqueness to give it a 5. But it's a lot of fun. I like Frasier at the pub. I like him singing along to the old drinking tunes. I like the poker scene, actually. I really like the poker scene with Martin and Roz. Roz comes over and joins the table of all Martin's old buddies. You've got Duke and Frank. Who else is there? I can't remember their names.
I can't remember the names.
I think everyone else's
old
characters
cop friends.
we haven't really met before. But it's just, there's something really lovely about that scene and seeing Roz get on with them all and how well they all get on with her as well. Like when they talk about her being pregnant and they're all very like supportive of it. They're all very kind to her. And I don't know, I just really like that. I love Martin and Roz. I think they're such a great team. They're just, any time they get to do anything together is a load of fun. So yeah, there's a lot of good moments. But what did you think? Sorry, rambling on a wee bit.
No, so I gave it a 3.
Okay.
I do enjoy it, but I think it's just a little bit more in the middle. I don't think I could give it a 4, to be totally honest.
That's fair.
I really enjoy seeing Frasier and Niles as kids.
Yes.
I think they're really funny. I think that the actors, the kids that they got in to play them, are really good.
Yeah.
I looked them up. I was curious to see if they continued to go on to have acting careers, and the actor that plays young Frasier, as far as I know, didn't appear in much else afterwards, other than a few other small parts. But the actor that played young Niles, Michael Welch, was in the Twilight films.
Oh, really?
He played Mike in the Twilight films. I'm not really familiar with Twilight, but
Mike.
that seemed to be his kind of most well-known.
I have no idea
role.
who that is. I think I've seen the Twilight films once and then vowed never to look at them again.
Yeah.
Because they're awful. But there you go. Good for Michael Welch. He had a career after Frasier.
He did.
Yeah. Is it them that showed up again? There's another flashback in one of the later series. It's not. I don't think it's the same actors, is it?
I'm not sure. It could be.
Possibly. You're talking maybe 5-year difference, so I guess they'd be a bit older, but yeah. We'll bear that in mind when we get to season 10, maybe even 11. I don't know. I can't remember when that episode is.
Season 9.
9. Okay, it's a bit sooner than I thought then. Okay, well, yeah. Fine. For now, though, we're moving on. And unfortunately, we've come to the end of one of our favourite characters. Ain't Nobody's Business If I Do is sadly the last episode to feature Sherry. And I'm just broken up about it because I love Sherry. There's not enough Sherry in this show. There's just not. She does not get enough time. what is
Yeah.
it? Six
all-
episodes
all
maybe.
told, yeah, 6 episodes.
Yeah,
Not
like
many at all.
that's not enough. When you've got someone like Marsha Mason who's just embodies that role, man, she just absolutely nails it every scene she's in. It's yeah. So ain't nobody's business if I do. The plot is basically Martin is ready to ask Sherry to marry him. The boys realize they don't know much about Sherry and hire a private investigator to get some details on her, figure out what's going on, what she's been up to. And basically, in the end, results in Martin proposing, and unfortunately, the two of them decide to part ways rather than have a life together, and it's very sad.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
It is sad. It's yeah, because it's not particularly funny. This is another one of those
No.
episodes. We've said it before. That sometimes they'll focus on a little bit more of the kind of character depth, a little bit more emotional, and a little bit more somber.
Yeah.
And it just means that there's not as much room for the comedy and all the jokes that they would usually put in.
Yeah.
And some episodes really suffer for it, because they just don't feel all that engaging, but they also don't have any jokes. And then there are some that really don't need the jokes, and they do really well with just that like emotional depth.
Yeah. This one is there's a little bit more to the plot than I gave a brief overview. Like more specifically, there is a little bit of a it's farce almost, not quite. Daphne is the one who finds the engagement ring, and the three, Daphne, Frasier, Niles, behind Martin's back are all kind of trying to work out if Sherry's right for him. Niles then hires the private investigator behind everyone else's back, and there's a little bit of sort of humor there, just in people not knowing what's going on, and who knows what. And then at the end of the episode, when Martin and Sherry go out to dinner at McGinty's, or for a drink, I don't know, they go out to McGinty's, Martin leaves the engagement ring at home, and Frasier's the one to go and like chase them down and interrupt them in the middle of dinner. So there is like sort of humorous moments and misunderstandings throughout the episode, but it's definitely one that would benefit from kind of picking a side, I guess, in this sort of humor versus emotional battle, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get you.
It kind of teeters on the side of both of them. Like the scene at the end when Martin and Sherry are chatting, and he does kind of propose. He doesn't really propose. He says he wants to get married again, and she says she doesn't, and they kind of hit a stalemate and decide to part ways. It's a very good scene. It's very well acted. There is a bit of emotional weight to it, but definitely nowhere near what we've seen before with some of the other scenes and some of the other cast as well, which is a shame because you've got John Mahoney and Marsha Mason against each other in a very serious scene. I think it doesn't do either of them credit the way the scene plays out, and I think that's a shame. But
yeah, I agree.
It's just a shame because I think Sherry had so much more potential. I think they either could have waited this episode out longer and given us some more sort of fun episodes featuring Sherry, or they could have had them get engaged and played a more sort of serious arc with Martin's character for, I don't know how long that would have lasted, but I mean, I would have had no problem if that had been the remainder of the show. But I guess it's still young. They don't really know what they're going to do with the rest of the series. Do they want to have Martin get tied down so early on? So I kind of get that there would probably be hesitation there.
Yeah. One of the big issues with if Martin were to have a long-lasting love interest, if Martin were to marry Sherry in season 5, the two of them would live together. And then you're taking away the core dynamic of the show.
That's true.
Of
That's very
Martin
true.
and Frasier living together. You wouldn't have that. Because, I mean, you wouldn't have Frasier and Martin and Sherry living under one roof.
Yeah. Yeah, I never really thought of that, actually. But that's a very good point. Yeah, it's a very good point.
It's kind of telling that we don't really see Martin in that kind of serious relationship again until getting right towards the end of the show.
Yeah.
When they have that end in sight, knowing that that's a way that they can close it off.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true, actually. Yeah, it's a really good point. I think there's other aspects that they kind of gloss over a lot in this episode. Things like the fact that Martin is considering remarrying after his previous wife died, that they don't even mention in this episode. Like, that's not even a consideration for any of the cast. Well, any of the characters, I suppose. Throughout the episode. They don't mention Hester once. Martin just at the end of the episode, towards the end of the episode, literally just says, look, I'm ready to get married again. But we don't see his journey. We don't see his thought process for that. There's no discussion about it. There's no chat with Frasier and Niles saying, like, you know, are you ready to have a mother again kind of thing. There's none of that. And that feels very out of character for Martin. To me, it's always felt like he knew that Sherry would say no, and this was his way of breaking up with her, because he definitely doesn't seem as upset as she is when they break up. I don't know if that's the intention, but I've always felt that.
Yeah, maybe.
She's been married, I think they say 6 times before. So the thought of being married one more time was, I guess, too much for her. I don't know. It just kind of doesn't fit with the characters. It feels kind of out of the blue and just kind of a way to write Sherry out of the show. Which, if that is the case, then fine. If Marsha Mason was done and she didn't want to come back, then fair enough. You have to write Sherry out of the show. But if they were planning it as like a natural progression of Martin's story this season, that he would propose and then they would break up, that it doesn't feel right if you look at it that way. It definitely feels like they missed something in doing that.
Yeah. I could imagine if it turned into a longer arc, that kind of conversation of Martin suddenly feeling guilty over moving on from Hester would probably fall in line with 3 Dates and a Breakup.
Yeah.
Where we saw a very similar reaction from him when he said "I love you" to Sherry for the first time.
Yeah.
Another story like that with us, him suddenly realizing I'm getting remarried.
That's
and
exactly
having
what
all
I was
that
thinking
guilt,
of. Yeah, that's exactly the episode I was kind of comparing it to. Think about how much emotional weight that carries compared to this episode.
Yeah.
And that's just them saying, I love you. There's nothing to do with marriage or anything. But that episode, I think, definitely does both characters a lot more justice than this does. And that's a shame. It's sad. I resent this episode for that. I think Sherry deserved better. But I'll ask you first. What did you give it? How did you rank this episode?
I give it a 3.
Okay.
This is another one that I think is just sort of it has its ups and downs, and in the end, it meets in the middle. It's I like the ending. I think it's not the best time that this has been done, but Frasier and Martin sitting together having a beer. I mean, it contrasts from the way that they talk frankly and openly, and that's what's so touching about it. Mm-hmm. This time, they're not talking. They're sitting silently having a beer together, watching the game, because that's what Martin needs. He doesn't want Frasier to be a psychiatrist and talk about his feelings. He doesn't want to, unburden himself with what he's feeling, like in 3 Dates and a Breakup.
Yeah, absolutely.
He just wants company, and it's almost like that's the next step after that, where they've gone beyond Frasier can act as a psychiatrist for his dad to now Frasier's more like a friend. They can be there for Martin, just as company, without it needing to be a whole talking about their feelings and whatever. And I like seeing that. I think that's nice.
Yeah, it is. But again, as you say, it's definitely, I think, on the lower end of the quality scale if we're looking at Frasier and Martin late night conversations, but yeah, it's still nice. I settled for a 3 as well. I have to say it's not it. Yeah, I was debating going even lower, to be honest. Mm-hmm. Because, as you said right at the start, it just doesn't balance the humor and the emotional weight well at all. It is neither one nor the other, and that is its downfall, I guess. It's just not enough of either, and you need to either have a good balance of enough of both, or you need to have an excessive amount of one or the other, and I think this just does none of that. It's just kind of I was going to say half-assed. It's not half-assed. It just misses the mark, I think, when it comes to both the humour and the emotional depth that we'd expect from an episode surrounding a breakup and things like marriage. So, yeah. It's a shame, but it is what it is. There's no lady like Sherry. She's one in a million. And unfortunately, it's time to say goodbye.
What's the line in... when is it? I can't even remember which episode it's in now. Was it one of the ones in the last disc? Martin's going out clothes shopping with Sherry and says, there's not another woman on the planet with Sherry's fashion sense. And Niall says, yes, Carmen Miranda having passed on.
Yeah. I don't know who that is, but it's funny nonetheless. Who is Carmen Miranda?
She was a singer, wasn't she?
I don't know.
Is she the one that wore fruit on her head?
I was about to say, that's who I picture. That's who I picture, is that like stereotypical pineapple on the head with all like the feather boas and the like tutus dancing around on like a Las Vegas stage. That's who I picture.
Yeah.
So if that's who Carmen Miranda is, then great. I've nailed it.
I think so.
I've nailed the image in my head, even though I had no idea specifically who that was.
There you
go. Yeah. Okay. Well, goodbye, Sherry. It's been lovely having you, but it's time for you to leave, I'm afraid. But that's fine, because the next episode, Baby's back, baby. I wrote that down specifically because I was really happy with Baby's back, baby.
Baby.
Baby. Baby's back, baby. Yes, the zoo story, which is a pretty great episode. It's another good one. I do enjoy it. Baby, as I said, is back, baby, and she's trying to get the attention of Frasier again after he fired her at the end of Roz's turn in season 4. She is, however, explicitly got Roz as a client. She has taken Roz on and is getting her gigs, like, what is it she says, like voiceover work, and sort of guest spots talking about her pregnancy and stuff, which is pretty cool. Obviously doing well. We know Baby's a good agent, if a little bit morally bankrupt. She is good at what she does. And throughout the episode, she's trying to win Frasier back. Frasier is convinced that he needs to find a good agent, and he has salary renegotiations coming up, so he needs to find someone, and he does, in the lovely Ben, who I think is a Mormon. They say at one point is a Mormon.
Because he's from... Well, he talks about singing in a choir in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
And that in Utah, which is, like, very Mormon.
Mormon Central USA.
So the idea being... Yeah. Well, apparently. I don't know. I've never been.
Yeah, but, I have no idea.
I think that's the idea that if you go to a church in Utah, it is almost definitely a Mormon church.
Okay. That's fair. But yeah, I mean, he's a lovely guy. He's happy. He's go lucky. He does like the Meals on Wheels deliveries. He makes toys in his workshop for underprivileged kids. He just seems like a really good egg. But just nothing seems to go his way, unfortunately. And yeah, it eventually leads to just varying degrees of Frasier and his family being injured, and eventually a crane being fed a gobstopper, not like a human Frasier crane, like a bird crane. And BB gets her way in the end, doesn't she? She wins Frasier back.
He does.
I have to say, I feel so sorry for Ben in this episode because he does everything right.
Yeah.
Like, if you think about it, none of the bad things that happen throughout the episode are explicitly Ben's fault. They're all from, like, outside forces. He arranges the photo shoot with the crane at the zoo, and it's Martin that lets the crane out to then chase him and bite his ear off.
Yeah.
And then the subsequent photo, like the subsequent, like, what you call it, like damage control photo shoot with the crane on the little homemade psychiatrist's couch, which is just adorable. I really want one of those for my dog. I really want one. Yeah, that subsequent photo shoot when the crane, the sedatives wear off too quickly, and he then chases Frasier around the couch and pecks his head. Again, not Ben's fault. It's the sedatives didn't work. There's no way he could have foreseen that. So the whole like attitude throughout the episode, particularly from Martin, where it's like there's no such thing as a good agent, is nonsense, because Ben is a good agent. Everything he does is a good idea. It just doesn't pan out correctly.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel sorry for Ben. I think he gets a hard stick in this episode. But we get Baby back, so ultimately it's all for the better. She's great in this episode. She's so evil.
She is. Yeah, I think there's some of the best BB. Well, at the end of season 3, when where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the best BB episodes. And one of Harriet Harris's favorite episodes, as she told us on Twitter.
It is, yeah.
Friend of the podcast, Harriet Harris. But I think this is where you really see BB like as an agent at her best. Maybe. I mean, she's always our best, frankly. But...
Yeah. No, I'd agree, because we see like this is the like surrounding this episode explicitly there is salary negotiations, and we see Gil getting totally screwed over. He gets like a pay cut, not even like a smaller rise than he was expecting. He explicitly gets a pay cut. We see Ben being really scared of the salary negotiator. What do they call him again? The Hammer?
The Hammer.
Is it the Hammer they call him? Yeah. And then we see BB rock up and get Roz like a 30% raise or something. And a guest spot on Dr. Clint Webber's show, who shows up in a few episodes' time. I don't know if you noticed. I didn't. Yeah. I mean, obviously I knew, but it didn't click that that's the same Clint Webber that we actually see in person later on. Which is a nice little bit of foreshadowing, I guess, kinda.
Yeah.
But yeah, she obviously does the best out of everyone there. So we see that she knows what she's doing, like explicitly. We always knew she was a good agent. She's the best. She's the best bad agent there is. or the worst best agent.
Sure.
Which way around would you go?
She's the best. That's it. She's the best.
She's the best. She's just the best. Yeah, she is absolutely just the best. I like Niles in this episode as well. Niles has a great little B plot here. He's trying to convince himself that he does not need to meet up with Maris for a conjugal visit. They're still separated, but they kind of jump back and forward, and I always forget where we are in the story. But they've not fully reconciled, but they're in counselling at the moment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're in counselling, but they're working. They're trying to find a new psychiatrist who will let them sleep together.
Because I think their couples counsellor suggested that they shouldn't be seeing each other. Outside of their sessions, they shouldn't be getting together or going on dates or whatever.
Yeah.
But Maris is trying to convince. Oh no, I might be mixing it up with another episode.
I think.
Is it not that Maris is withholding sex until Niles gives in?
You're right.
And gets the new therapist.
You're right. She wants a new therapist because he told her to stop on catalogue shopping during the sessions.
Yeah.
And Niles refuses because obviously that's ridiculous, but she is then withholding sex until he does fire the therapist. So that's the kind of Frasier and Niles are kind of competing to see who's going to break first from their like moral quandaries, whether Frasier will rehire BB or whether Niles will fire the psychiatrist and go back to Maris. So we get some good jokes there, and then obviously at the end of the episode when Frasier does go back to BB, we see Niles like running out of the cafe off to Maris.
Yeah, I do love that, just screaming for a taxi as he runs out of the cafe.
It's not even like on screen. He's not even in the focus of the shot. He just hears Frasier and BB talking, and then you just see him kind of in the background almost running out the door. It's great. Yeah, it's really wonderful. And other than that, I think it's a great episode. I think it's really funny. I think
I think it is as well.
It's got a good supporting cast. I love Ben. I love his innocence. I love just how much of a good guy he is, but he just doesn't get the world. He just doesn't. He doesn't fit in, but he just tries so hard, and he's so lovely. And then you've got BB, who just understands everything, but just is an awful human being. Who's, yeah, again, anything with BB, just we love it. We love it. So last episode on the disc, how did you rank it?
I gave it a 4.
Wonderful. I also gave it a 4.
There you go.
Why did you give it a 4? Give me a bit more detail.
Tempted with a 5, but I figure a 4 is... Personally, I don't think it's quite up to scratch with Perspectives at Christmas, but obviously you don't agree because you don't have as high an opinion of that episode as I do.
Yeah.
But I think this is just another one of those episodes that, like, it really is great. I don't think there's anything wrong with it necessarily. There's just plenty of other episodes that I have given 5s to that I think are that little bit better. I don't think it's quite in the same tier as Perspectives of Christmas, or there are a couple in the next disc that are exceptional, and I don't think it is the same level as those.
That's I think that's fair, and pretty much sums up my feelings on it as well. It is a great episode, but just not quite the level of some of the other great ones that are surrounding it. Yeah, that's that, and that's disc 2. That's us done.
That's it.
How about that?
Exciting.
Yeah, it's weird not being able to see you. I'm not used to it. I can't tell when you're going to start talking, or when I should stop talking, and it's a very strange feeling. And I hope we can get back to in-person recording next week.
We will. We'll get back to in-person recordings very soon.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be a bit more natural.
It's actually interesting that you say it. I can't remember why I was listening to someone talking about this. I think it was a podcast. I think it was the Auntie Donna podcast. They were talking about going from recording remotely for a long time because of the lockdown, because of COVID, suddenly going back to recording in person again, and you kind of something that you develop when you're talking over Zoom or Discord, or when you're recording remotely like this, you need to come in hard because you don't have that personal thing of being able to see when someone's talking, so everyone just kind of jumps into the jokes very quickly, and then adjusting back to recording in person, it's hard to turn that off again.
No, I can get that. It's definitely...
Hopefully this will be one of very few, or if not the only, times that we will need to record remotely, and we can get back to doing it in person.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've had COVID now, so I'm basically invincible from now on.
Yeah. Indestructible. I don't foresee many opportunities for me to catch it again in the short term, so I think we're good for now. Just you need to stay healthy and alert as well, and we should be all good. But before we sign off for the end of this disc, do you have any highlights for me? Ooh.
What did you?
I think I'm probably going to have to give it to... Okay, this is it's quite a silly joke, but in the zoo story, as we're talking about, there's this B plot with Niles. He's getting quite horny, frankly. I don't think there's really any other way that you could put it.
There's no way to skirt around it. Just say it.
He's getting very horny. Maris is purposely winding him up because she knows that this is a way that she's going to get what she wants.
Yeah.
So she's really riling him up. And at one point they're in the cafe, and Niles is talking with Frasier, and the waitress comes over and says, "Can I do anything else for you?" And Niles holds up a biscotti and says, "Yes, would you mind nibbling this provocatively?" And then Frasier, I think, just kind of yells at him, and he just has this shocked look on his face. He can't even believe what he said. He's just hit on this waitress.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. It's a very you definitely wouldn't say that in real life.
No, God no.
To anyone, let alone a waitress, really.
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay, anyone in public, I guess. But yeah, it is. The little scene is funny. It is good. I had a bit of a struggle, I'm not going to lie, picking out a highlight from this disc. I think there are very few standout moments, which I think is a shame. But I decided to go with the poker scene with Roz and Martin and the other ex-cops and Duke and Martin's buddies. And I don't really have much more of a reason other than I just like it. There's something really just like nice and comforting about it. I think I've said that about another scene, and I can't off the top of my head remember which scene it was. I'm trying to remember, and I can't. And I'm sure when you do another highlights video, you might be able to find it. But yeah, there's something just really nice and comforting about Martin and Roz just hanging out as friends. You've got like Frank, who's very, he's a very tough, blue-collar ex-cop, but he's so sweet when he's talking to Roz, and they're so like, their banter's really great. When she talks about choosing, who's it, Angie Dickinson or Ursula Andress, to be stuck on a desert island with, and Roz is kind of saying like, once again, if I had to choose, if, and they're kind of like winding each other up, and there's just, I don't know, there's something really like wholesome and nice about that whole scene, and I really like it. So that's my highlight.
Good.
Yep. Yeah. Well then, if you have nothing more to add, then that's us. Bye.
Nope, nothing more to add.
No, I'm not doing that. No, we'll tie it up normally. We won't just like cut it short there. But just remember, I have the power to. I do the editing, friend. I can cut it off whenever I like.
That'd be a really good place to end.
This is going to be the 1 week where I end up passing over to you to edit, and you just make me sound like a jerk,
God.
Isn't it?
Maybe.
Okay, well, with that, jokes aside, have a fantastic rest of your week, everyone. Have a great day, good mental health. Don't catch COVID. Make sure you avoid that stuff because it's not nice. And thank you for listening. And goodbye for real this time. Bye. This has been a Happy Brothers podcast. Make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at HappyBrosPod.
All opinions are our own, and as always, special thanks to Leah O'Donnell for the show's artwork.